So coming after Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, us GTA fans had no idea what to expect. Where would this franchise go now? Where would it take place? Who would we play as? Well, all those questions were answered when we got Grand Theft Auto 4. With this game being the first GTA game to release on the PS3 and 360 consoles, this game was the first to make a real jump in graphics to make everything look and feel better than ever before. With this game releasing in 2008, it's been over a decade since I played this and wanted to see why I loved this game as much as I did. So to make things simple, I'm just going to give my thoughts on the main game and each DLC in their entirety in different sections of this video. Let's get started with the base game for Grand Theft Auto 4.
Your letters to my mother, in your letters to me, all I hear about is Mr. Big, Mr. Roman, living the American dream. Sports cars, condos, women, money, the beach, opportunity. I come here and the only thing big about your life is the cockroaches.
If you have seen any of my other GTA reviews, you'll know that Liberty City is not my favorite place to play in. In both GTA 3 and Liberty City stories, I had my complaints about the city and the overall atmosphere, stating that it was boring and didn't feel lifelike. As I expected, I felt the complete opposite in GTA 4. I think this iteration of Liberty City is by far the best version of the city that has ever been done. Right from the beginning, when you're picked up off the boat with Roman, it feels different than before. Then as you start driving and exploring around the city, it all starts to come together. The buildings and lights catch your eye easily. Then there's a bunch of people littered across the city streets having their own conversations. Everything resembles how the city should actually look. Now to be fair, the GTA and Liberty City stories had this as well, but I didn't think it hit the same because of the graphics. The jump in graphics from the PS2 games to GTA 4 makes a huge difference in terms of immersion. Of course, replaying this in 2025, these graphics are now outdated, but when comparing how this game looks compared to the older GTA games, it's like night and day. With how good everything looks, it's easy to get immersed and really buy into the city the devs were trying to create. Before, it looked like a bunch of old buildings and random NPCs walking around, but none of it had any flair. This time around, everything had a distinct look and feel to it, and it made all the difference. Just looking at the people on the street, it wasn't just the same NPCs walking around, but the majority of the people were dressed different depending on the area and be doing their own thing instead of just walking all the time. This seems minute on the surface, but when running into all these goons and criminals all the time that do look the same, having the citizens look a bit varied was appreciated. And this goes beyond the city overall, but to the characters you meet in the story. Similar to San Andreas, I thought this game did an outstanding job at creating memorable characters and getting you to care about them even if they don't make it all the way to the end. What's great is that they're slowly introduced too, as you're not encountering all the best characters from the beginning, but instead you meet them at distinct points within the story. Each character is unique from each other, giving you a reason to like or not like them, which is great considering in a lot of games the support characters are forgettable. A perfect example is Manny. You meet Manny in the first half of the game, and at first he seems just like an irrelevant character. In regards to the overall plot, he is, but as you complete missions for him, his entire vibe leaves an impression on you. If you're like me, then you might find this guy annoying but funny, or you might hate him entirely. Regardless of how you feel about him, once you see what happens to him, you may find yourself confronting the emotions that were building up at that moment. Long story short, this game does a great job of getting you invested in the characters for whatever reason, which is tough to do when they only have so much screen time. In its entirety, I think the story for GTA 4 is the best in the entire franchise. It's different than the others with it being dark and gritty, which is the complete opposite of what San Andreas was. From the very beginning, there was consequences to all of our decisions. It didn't matter how big or small the decision was, there were stakes to consider in every situation. For the first time in the franchise, Rockstar implemented the ability to make choices, giving you different endings depending on the choice that you make. This added a whole other layer to the story, really putting the control in the player's hands instead of everything being predetermined. What makes this story so great is how everything is weaved together so nicely. Like every character is connected to each other in some way, even if they never interact with each other. The actions you take in the beginning may affect one person, but another person you may have heard of or seen is affected by those decisions, and now you have to deal with them. It's almost like it was taken right out of a TV show, but if you're not paying attention, these moments can go right over your head. A perfect example is in the very beginning when working for Vlad. Nobody likes this guy, but we need money and end up working for him anyways. Over the course of our journey working for him, we hear him speak about someone named Faustin multiple times, so it's not a coincidence that once our business relationship with Vlad ends, we end up working with Faustin, even though when we were working with Vlad there was no indication that this would ever happen. Just fantastic setup. As you get deeper in the story, things just get more and more tense, Everything that you do, the people you meet, and the decisions you make increase the stakes even further. The plot twists in this game you can't see coming and will blindside you on a first playthrough. If I could compare this storytelling to anything, it's most similar to GTA 3, as the theme of betrayal still felt all throughout this game. Time after time after time, we see people backstab and betray each other, all for various reasons, which lines up exactly with what happened in 3. But what separates this story from that one is that Nico actually has emotion and layers to him, unlike Claude, who is pretty much a hitman. Seeing how Nico reacts to all these moments and how his character grows from the beginning, while understanding the real reason why he went to Liberty City in the first place, is incredible. The story for GTA 4 is by far the most memorable for me, and if you're hearing about this for the first time, buckle up because you're going to be in for a hell of a ride. Now when it comes to the gameplay, it's not perfect, but it's still just as addicting as it was before. You play in a third-person perspective as Nico Bellic, an Eastern European ex-soldier trying to escape his criminal past. If you played any other GTA before this, then at its core, everything is still the same. You're still running, driving, and shooting all over Liberty City while trying to avoid the police and complete missions. But where the changes are seen are more on the micro level. Starting with the worst part of the gameplay, the driving just sucks. It feels good to actually drive, but the steering is so bad. If you drive anywhere near top speed, you're gonna crash as you try to turn. The only way I was able to get around this was by driving slower or turning extremely early to compensate for the fact that I was gonna slide 30 feet before actually making the turn. It's weird because the driving has always been pretty good in GTA games, so I'm unsure why it was so bad in this one. Maybe the devs were trying to make the driving feel more realistic, but in the process of doing so, they ended up making the steering worse. Even considering how bad the driving is, it's still fun to actually perform once you understand what you need to do to drive effectively. Just like the previous titles, there's races that you can go through, so once you understand what you need to do to drive correctly, those are fun to go through. But if you're one of those players that absolutely hates the driving, then I understand completely. Thankfully, Rockstar offered a way to offset the driving entirely, even if that wasn't their intention. Unlike GTA 3 and Liberty City stores, you had the option to call for a taxi and use that to get to your destination, serving as the fast travel for the game. I abuse this mechanic so much because the map is pretty big, and when you consider how bad the driving is along with how spaced out each section is from each other, the taxis were a must. By simply pressing L1, you could whistle and get a taxi to pull over and give you a ride, unless there was already a passenger inside. Once inside the cab, you can scroll through the destinations and pick one to tell the driver where to go. From here, you're able to sit through the entire ride or skip it so you can get to where you wanted to go. In addition, you have the ability to call for a taxi using your cousin's cab service for no extra charge. How do you go about unlocking that? I'll describe it in a bit, but the entire taxi mechanic was brilliant. I thought in the older games, trying to traverse between the islands was an absolute chore, and there was so much driving that made going from place to place seem like a hassle. But in GTA 4, that was completely changed, and that isn't thanks to the taxi service. So I just mentioned something about unlocking your cousin's cab service. In order to do that, you have to spend time with him until you get his relationship to 100%, where you unlock the side character's special ability. I thought this was a really cool way to get us to spend more time with the support characters than we normally would. Like I already mentioned, you meet all these characters over the course of the story, and certain ones get added as a contact in your phone, which then allows you to organize activities that you can do to grow your relationship. These activities venture from bowling, drinking, eating, comedy clubs, and more. Certain activities align with one person versus another, but for the most part you can do pretty much anything with anyone. Once you do enough of these activities, your relationship will max out and you'll unlock that person's special ability, which for Roman was his cab service. I think this entire system was done really well because the game didn't tell you what that person's ability was, you just had to find out. Then on top of that, you were able to do the same thing but with your girlfriends. So just like in San Andreas, you're able to date multiple women and take them out on dates consisting of some of the activities that I already mentioned. After a certain number of them, they would invite you back to their place and then the magic would happen. Just like everyone else, your girlfriends were contacts in your phone where you could set all of this up. But in order to even meet these women, you had to use a computer and an internet cafe located across the city. What I thought was so cool about this game was the inclusion of all the technology. Since we're talking about the computers, once you entered a cafe, you could find a chair and then log on to the computer. You could then click a handful of different things like your email, the dating site to meet women, or other cool links. It really was like you were browsing the internet. This being in a GTA game was absolutely insane. Many times during the missions, you would be required to log on to the computer and use the internet too, which made it even more realistic. In regards to the phones that I've already mentioned, you're given one early on in the game. From there, as you get further in the story, you get more and more contacts in your phone that will call or message you with info depending on the situation. The cool thing is that you can call them at times after certain events and they will respond with a dialogue regarding what just happened, making it seem like a real conversation. Honestly, adding all of this tech into GTA was something that I didn't know I needed, but it makes complete sense. When this game released, it was 2008, the internet and phones were around, but it was nowhere near the level where it is today. Cell phones weren't as advanced as they are now, and computer cafes were definitely a thing back then, as not everyone had a PC or a laptop. Just adding all of this into the game made it align with the current climate of the world back in the late 2000s. Oh yeah, and if you were wondering, the phone is where you would enter your cheat codes too, which was a slick way of still adding those into the game. Another area that could have used some work was the shooting. It's not that it felt bad, but the aiming felt a little off. It's weird because I can't quite describe what's wrong with it, but when you actually go to aim, it just feels weird. What I ended up doing was trying to spam the auto aim and then abuse that to move to enemy. It might be a bit cheap, but I thought it was the easiest way to go about it, considering many times there's enemies surrounding you from all sides. I liked the life bars that were around the reticle of your enemy, showing how much damage they had taken, but still the aiming could have used some work. Similar to the driving though, you just get used to it. Now it did describe the activities you could do with your friends, but what shocked me was the lack of things to do outside of those. I know what you're thinking, but you just said there were things to do. And I know that, but looking at San Andreas, there was things that you could do just as CJ that aren't present in this game. Like outside of the activities in this, what is there to do? Between the bowling, darts, racing, everything is considered an activity, but what can Nico do on his own that isn't considered an activity? Maybe using a police car to hunt down criminals or play one of the games by yourself, but there really isn't much there. In San Andreas, you were able to go to driving and flying school, go to the gym and work out, or learn fighting moves, play basketball on top of the co-op. It just felt like San Andreas had more additional content packed inside of it, whereas 4 did not. But to be fair, this game has 2 entire DLCs where San Andreas didn't. But after finishing this game, it just surprised me that after I beat it, there wasn't a whole lot to do or collect outside of activities or searching for Easter eggs. It doesn't take away from how much I enjoyed the game though. When looking at the base game for GTA 4 as a whole, it's simply fantastic. Considering we didn't know what type of game this was going to be, I think Rockstar did an awesome job at taking us back to Liberty City for a third time and creating an unforgettable experience. The leap in graphics combined with the dark and gritty story helped craft a GTA experience unlike no other. It's amazing because at the time this originally released, this game was getting slandered heavy because it was so different than the others that came before it. However, now I think this game gets a lot more respect as it's aged over the years. Nonetheless, this game was everything that I always wanted from Liberty City, and I'm so glad I was able to experience this all over again. Now with that being said, let's move on to the first of the 2 DLCs, The Lost and the Damned. The Lost and the Damned is the DLC that I feel gets overlooked, not because it's bad, but because it's not as epic as the base story in the second DLC. You play as Johnny Klebitz, who at the start of the DLC is the vice president of Lost, a biker gang in Liberty City. Over the course of this DLC, you see how the biker gang changes as different events unfold, with some of them being planned and others not. Regardless of what happens, what I liked most about this DLC was the relationship between Johnny and Billy. Without going too much into it, Billy is the president of the biker club who has just returned after a brief stint in rehab. For a chunk of this DLC, the tension between Johnny and Billy is palpable. Right from the beginning, they're bickering between each other, and you can see the difference in their thinking when making decisions on what to do next. Many times Johnny wants to do one thing, while Billy wants to do something completely opposite. This friction kind of reminded me of the Walking Dead TV show if you ever watched it, where in the early seasons Rick and Shane had a similar dynamic, supposed brothers for life but could never see eye to eye on any decisions. But we move on. What I think this DLC did really well was how the story for this was weaved into the story for the base game. Since you're playing as Johnny, you see certain events from his perspective while also connecting some dots on how things happened. It's like finding out some important lore that helps tie up some lingering questions that you might have had from the base game. All of this was deeply appreciated, as many times I found myself like, oh okay, so that's how this happened. It all lined up so beautifully. By the time the story ends, you'll have a greater sense of what was going on when Johnny appears during certain parts of the base game. And now knowing that not everything surrounding the Lost was sunshine and rainbows as it may have appeared to be initially. The plot isn't anything that will leave you in awe, but for a DLC that was never the expectation, the story does exactly what it was supposed to do. Fill in some gaps while keeping us entertained. Now on the gameplay side, at its core, it's still the same. All the controls and mechanics are the same from the base game, so that was fine. What did change was just some of the minor tweaks that Rockstar added to try to make this feel a bit different, to have it stand on its own. Again, similar to the story, none of these are groundbreaking, but they do allow this to have its own sort of thing. if you know what I mean. So first off, since you're in a biker gang, this means that you have other members you interact with. You can interact with them inside the clubhouse where you're able to partake in a couple of activities like arm wrestling, pool, and card games. I thought this was a cool way to get the player to spend more time doing side stuff instead of just beelining the story. Adding these fun games and things inside the clubhouse was a smart way to try and make the transition between base game to DLC feel as seamless as possible. I played these activities for a little while, but overall, I didn't spend too much time in the clubhouse. Next, the gang members that were a part of the loss could help you in battle, so you would ride out with your gang and go do whatever. As you get into shootouts and fights, whoever survives would get stronger so they could do more damage and be even more useful for the next battle. I thought this mechanic was cool, but what's weird is that even if you level the guys up fully, they can still die, which is exactly what happened to me. Outside of Terry and Clay, pretty much anybody in the gang can die, so it kind of defeats the entire purpose of this mechanic, but I still think it was a good idea. In regards to the actual fights, outside of the main missions, there are these gang wars that you can partake in, which are exactly what they sound like. You just go around and kill these rival gangs. These are actually pretty fun and are meant to serve as the means to strengthen your gang members. Unfortunately, after I did some of these and had my members leveled up fully, then they died in the next fight, I just abandoned these activities entirely. There's bike races located all around the city that you can do as well, but I wasn't all that interested in them. It was cool to see nothing but bikes in these races, but I feel that there wasn't any real incentive to doing these, so I did a couple and moved on. Other than that, there really wasn't much else to do with this DLC. The meat and potatoes of it comes from the missions, which are pretty fun and have a solid story, so that's where you'll find most of your enjoyment. Nonetheless, I think The Lost and the Damned is worth playing through if you've never gone through it, as it sheds more light on Johnny and some events that happened during the base game. The second of the DLCs many consider even better than the base game, and I see why. I'm going to just call this Ballad to save time, but Ballad is absolutely incredible. The entire tone and theme of this DLC is a complete 180 from The Lost and the Damned. You play as Luis Lopez, who is seen many times over the course of the base story, as you see what he's going through while trying to protect nightclub mogul Tony Prince. The story does the same thing as the first DLC, with the filling in the gaps regarding some crucial events and characters that we see in the main story. What this DLC does is sort of give us the final side of a triangle, as between Nico, Johnny, and Luis's stories, they're all connected and tells different views of the same story. So by the time you finish this game's story, you will finally know everything that happened in the entire plot, understanding each detail because you know who did what, when they did it, and why they did it. Personally, I consider the story for GTA 4 to be the best in the series, and Ballad serves as the icing on the cake to that. In terms of gameplay, you should already know by now that this plays just like the base game. There isn't anything new in regards to how you drive, shoot, and run around, but what is drastically different are the activities that you can do within the DLC. In Ballad, the most notable mechanic that's introduced are the clubs, as you can do a couple things inside the main club, Masonette 9. You can take shots at the bar, with you getting drunk after a couple, participate in champagne drinking challenges to see who can down the bottle the fastest, dance with someone on the floor leading to a group dance if done correctly, and lastly perform club management where you act as a bouncer for the club. The entire club and nightlife scene is what makes this DLC stand on its own. All of this just feels different than anything we've seen in GTA 4. It's apparent that Luis is supposed to be this ladies' man, and so many times I found myself sleeping with women in this DLC. This could be in the club from someone on the dance floor, with the crazy chick that oversees the club management, or actually in the game during the main story. Regardless, it's just cool to play as Luis, as he stands out so much more from Nico and Johnny, as those two align with what GTA 4 is, being dirty and grimy. There's other clubs outside of the Masonette, as you can go to Hercules, the all-male club, or Bahama Mamas as part of a mission. In my opinion, I think Bahama Mamas is the best club overall. Just the size of the club along with the entire theme makes it better than the other two. I think it's a shame that the clubs were limited to just this DLC, because if you had them in the base game, it would have made that even better. Moving on from the clubs, there was other things to do that are new to the DLC. You can parachute jump off of high areas, sort of similar to San Andreas, where you would then have to steer the parachute and land on top of a designated point to get a certain score. There were these triathlons, which are really fun, where you would perform a variety of tasks in order to finish first in that race. This could be skydiving, boat racing, car racing, or something else, but it's all really fun. Similar to The Lost and the Damned, there's drug wars that you can do which have you stealing trucks or killing goons in order to get the drugs. These are kind of repetitive and don't serve much of a purpose unlike the first DLC. At least in that, you're able to increase your biker's strength to have them survive longer in battle. For these activities, all you do is get money. After doing a handful of these, I just moved on. I forgot to mention you can play golf, which was last seen in Vice City, but honestly, I never did that outside of the mission that requires you to play it. Lastly, there's a fighting club that you can participate in that lets you fight against a bunch of challengers. This was a really cool side activity is fighting people never gets old. Sure, the fighting is dated now with it being 2025, but it's still enjoyable. The biggest thing about these activities is that they were kept for the DLCs. If all of this was in the base game, it would have gave Nico so much more to do, but instead, once you beat the main story, there isn't much else. The missions themselves are really fun. It's hard to describe, but the people you meet combined with what you're doing makes these missions more exciting and memorable than GTA missions normally are. If you played this before, then you already know that there's a clear focus on flying and skydiving, as a handful of these missions require you to do it. Going through this game just feels like the devs were holding on to a bunch of ideas and finally let loose with this DLC. Even the simplest of things like shooting criminals inside of a building feels different, as you're going to find yourself in places that you've never been in before. I absolutely love this gameplay, even though it doesn't do a whole lot different at its core. I think exploring the nightlife scene along with everything that was already present makes Ballad the better of the two DLCs by far. Honestly, if Luis was the main character for the base game, I wouldn't have been mad at it, because he really is that cool. However, I'm satisfied with playing as him in just the DLC, because this DLC was an absolute blast. In its entirety, Grand Theft Auto 4 is fantastic. When you combine the base game along with both DLCs, the entire tone and mood of this game makes it so different than the others that came before it, and I think it works really well. Compared to GTA 3 and Liberty City stories, I think this game's version of Liberty City is by far the best, as it just feels like it has its own identity instead of being bland and underdeveloped. Sure, some of the activities should have been included in the base game, the driving was awful, and the game has aged a bit over the past decade, but nonetheless, it's still so much fun to play. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game a 10. Grand Theft Auto 4 is my second favorite game in the franchise, and replaying this so many years later felt like I was going through this for the first time all over again. The story is incredible, and the introduction of all the new mechanics and choices allows this game to stand on its own in comparison to other games. It's a shame this game hasn't gotten a proper port for the PlayStation, so more players can experience this for the first time. Assuming this is the last trip to Liberty City, I think we left this place on a high note, and I'm sure I'll return to this game in another couple years to replay it yet again. If you have never played GTA 4, I would definitely recommend it, as it's worth every penny. What did you think about Grand Theft Auto 4? Have you played this before, or are you hearing about this for the first time? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to watch one of my other reviews right here.